Hello and welcome everyone. I'm going to let people trickle in, so I'll keep admitting them. But I just want to have a massive welcome to Dave and I are really excited to have him tonight and really, really grateful. I'm so glad to see so many people on. I had the privilege of meeting Bill years ago at conferences, and I've heard him speak so many times. And then Dave and I got to see him at the conference in South Africa. But I always love to listen to you share. I think everything you so much hope to families, and I don't know, your stories kind of they seem unbelievable, but I know that I've then heard people that you've worked with share that same story, and I think it brings so much hope to families that I'm just so grateful to know you and to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
And may I just say, don't sorry to interrupt. This is a via donation event. If people are prepared to, this is to raise money for a young girl who is she's been in better shape, and so this is to help to raise some money to fund moving forward with this young girl. So this is a donation. You don't have to make a donation, but if you are impacted by Bill's work and you find benefit from this, we ask if it's possible you could make a donation to this appeal. And Bill has donated his time to this. Bill has graciously donated his time to this, so much thanks to Bill. Jen, I think somebody just put on the chat the donation crowdfunder. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I am more than glad to donate my time today. As a father of 4 grown children now, my youngest just had her 37th birthday recently. But I know how hard it can be to watch your children struggle and sometimes feel helpless to make things lighter for them. So I'll even address that later, because the most important thing as a parent is to find their own mental well-being. And some might think that's not possible. And if you believe it's not possible, it's not going to be possible. But if you're open to the possibility that that's where the gold lies, that's in fact that your child when they're struggling, if they see your worry, and this is not to judge anybody, all we can do, parent and child, is do the best we can. But the child often sees the parent's worry as one more burden. One more burden. I'm not only in pain myself, I see that I'm causing pain. And nobody wants to be causing pain. Really. It may seem that way, but that's not true. So can talk about that a little more later. I've had a lot of my own patients that I got invested in them getting better say the day that you stopped being invested, meaning having my ego, having my happiness invested in them getting better, the day that you stopped being invested, Dr. Pettit, was the day that I was free to be healed, to heal. Because I didn't have to either oppose you or please you, either one. And I've had many parents say that their children said, the day, Mom, that you said you were going to quit worrying about me, even that I might not be alive, the day that you said that and meant it, that you were just going to enjoy every moment that we had until that happened, if that happened, that really took a tremendous burden off my mind and allowed me to heal. So I'm not asking anybody to believe anything that I say today. I mean that. It's no psychological trick. What I would ask you to do as quietly as possible to listen with the possibility that you might hear something from within your own consciousness that will awaken a new level of understanding and a new level of hope. I'm going to say one more statement, and then I am going to ask that we get the questions. But recently, with Judy Sedgman in a course on Mr. Banks's 6 books, we read from The Enlightened Gardener Revisited, and one of the things that Mr. Banks said, so powerful, he said, as massive and huge as creation is, the stars and billions of stars, billions of galaxies, as huge as creation is and as massive and majestic, it is minuscule to what's inside the consciousness of every human being on earth. Wow. 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 So, be glad to take the questions that people would like to have addressed during the time that we're together here. We have 90 minutes. Am I right, Dave? We have 90 minutes?
Perfect. Thanks, Bill. If we could do it
Yeah.
in, if I don't know if everybody's okay with Zoom. You have a thing down the bottom. It's called reactions, and it's just above reactions. You can go into it, and it'll put raise hand. And it's a yellow hand like that. So I ask anybody who's got a question, please raise your hand via the Zoom.
Yeah, and I would ask people to well, I don't want to limit people, but to be as concise as you can, as clear as you can, and don't worry about how clear it is, but we'll just try to make sure that we use our time together as powerfully as possible.
Okay, so we just had one come through the chat.
Okay.
My child can't leave their room without extreme, anxious, and suicidal thoughts, but he wants to. How do I help?
Okay, and I'm sorry, this was a person that was close to them?
This is a mother.
Mother, okay.
This is mother talking about her child.
Okay.
The child has extreme anxiety and suicidal thoughts.
Okay, good.
He wants to
Great.
leave his room, but can't.
Okay. Okay. Okay, next.
So there's one, do you know if it's true about the longer someone is has psychotic symptoms and doesn't have drug treatment, then their brain rewires and creates neural pathways, cementing the psychotic behaviors as a new norm? So
that the longer that they're psychotic, then is this without medications, that the brain forms new pathways? Okay. Okay. Next. Anybody else?
How would you support someone who has unconscious traumatic programming from childhood, who experiences it in childhood? How would you support somebody who's carrying their trauma through their life?
And what was the first? How do you support someone who has, what was before the traumatic experiences?
Unconscious.
Impulses. I'm sorry, David.
No, you're right. Unconscious.
Unconscious.
Yes. How do you support someone who has unconscious traumatic programming from childhood, who then experiences it in adulthood?
Dave, I think your mic's better if you're a bit further back.
Is it? Right, is that better?
Unconscious traumatic experiences that what?
Yeah, unconscious traumatic programming from childhood, so their childhood experiences, and they're continuing to live them into adulthood.
Live them into what? I'm sorry.
Into adulthood.
Oh, into adulthood. Okay.
Yeah. So how do you support someone?
So when they say unconscious traumatic experiences, they must be conscious that they had them, but they feel that the effects of them are unconscious, that they just experience things. Okay. Okay.
Yes, that's how I read that.
Shall we
Richard,
take one
Richard.
more?
Richard, is that right? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's accurate, Dave. Thanks.
Top man. Cheers, Richard. Nice to see you, buddy. Nice to hear
Hello,
you anyway.
mate.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Shall we take
Maybe-
one?
Okay, there's two more coming, and then we'll stop at this point.
Okay.
Maybe touch on supporting teenage children through post-COVID social media world and the general rise in anxiety. So that's a bit of a hot topic at the moment.
Teenagers through, through post-COVID.
Yeah. So the post-COVID effect, social media, and general rise in anxiety. So could you have a conversation around that somehow?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and the last one. How do you help a 9-year-old child who has fear of life after losing an aunt at after a 3-year cancer battle, leaving behind her own small kids? My daughter now understands the reality of death and fears life now. So that's effectively a young child who's afraid of death and life.
Okay.
Because she's seen her auntie die of cancer.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. What I'm going to talk about, and so I'm going to kind of plan to talk about between 25 and 30 minutes. Say 30 minutes would take us to 12:47, and we'd still have, even if I take an old man bladder break, then we'd still have 40 minutes to take more questions and address the questions that have been answered, if I haven't answered them. In fact, one of the things I'm going to do is to check and see if the people that ask the questions have anything that maybe has come to them during the process. You know, it's very different to have, you know, like a 4-day program versus to have 90 minutes. And one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is to just let this 90 minutes go in without, I mean, your brain's going to have all kinds of comments. Yeah, but what about? Yeah, but anybody besides me got a whole bunch of yeah buts in their head? But I'm going to ask you to, as I asked somebody yesterday that has been struggling in an individual session, I said, I'm going to use the metaphor that when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old, I got walking pneumonia. I had a high temperature and I was coughing up green and yellow stuff and had a fever of 102 or 3. And Mom took me to the old family doctor. He was a wonderful man. And he even took some and put it on a slide, and he could see little pneumococcal running around. And he said, "You've got pneumococcal pneumonia. You've got walking pneumonia. And I'm going to ask you to bare your shoulder or your hip, whatever it was. And the nurse is going to come in and she's going to give you 80,000 units of penicillin G." Now, and he might have told me, when you walk out of my office, you're still going to have walking pneumonia. But 72 to 96 hours from now, you won't have walking pneumonia anymore. So I'm going to ask you all, to the best you can, to let this 90 minutes be a metaphoric injection of 80,000 units of penicillin G. Now, that might be kind of egotistical on my part to think that my talk is going to be equivalent to 80,000 units of penicillin G, but what the heck, we can do anything with our thinking. So imagine that it is an injection of 80,000 units of penicillin G to the soul, not to your brain. I'm not interested in your brain. I'm interested in your soul and your soul's understanding of your brain, that you're not your brain and you're not your thoughts. You're something much greater than that. That's powering your brain. And anyway, so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the system of life. And people might say, why are you going to do that? Well, to the degree that we understand any system in life, what's come to me recently is 2 things are true. I mean, a lot of things are true, and I'll give you examples of what I'm talking about, whether it's gravity or electricity or hydrology or you name it, or life. To the degree that you understand an entire system, number one, you're much less likely to hurt yourself with that system. And number two, you're much more likely to utilize all of the gifts that system has to the maximum. When I was 6 years old, and my brother, who's 77, I'm going to be 81 here in a couple of months. And my brother, who's 77, when I was 6 and he was 3, we were on vacation with our family. And I don't know if at that time, if he was 3, we might have not had, we didn't have all 6 of us. We might have had 4 of us of the 6. We were drinking out of Dad had bought us Cokes, and we stopped at a gas station. There were no 4-lane highways then, in 1948. And we were drinking out of our Coke bottles that Dad had put a straw in the Coke bottle. And at 6 years old, I understood enough about gravity that I knew to keep my hands on the Coke bottle. I knew that was important. I don't know how I knew that was important, but I'd experienced enough of life and observed that I knew it was important that I hold on to the Coke bottle. However, my 3-year-old brother, John, didn't have that understanding of gravity and life. So he decided he was going to let go of the Coke bottle and just hold on to the straw. Like a lot of things that we ourselves do and other people do, they seem logical to us, but then we wonder why disaster strikes. So as he held on to the straw, of course, the glass hit the floor shattered everywhere. Coke was everywhere. And I remember I always kid my brother. I said, I wish I would have had a camera of the look on your face. Like what the heck just happened? I'm holding onto this straw really tight. Shouldn't have happened. Didn't understand the system. And I have to remember that I have 37% Swedish blood and 37% Irish blood, and then 26% mutt, but my Irish, I have a little plaque from my dad, was from a little town in Northwest Iowa of Irish immigrants, Emmetsburg, named after Robert Emmett, one of their martyrs for the cause. And it says, you can know you're Irish if you have absolutely no idea how to make a long story short. My wife is sure that I'm Irish, so I'm doing my best here, folks. The Romans understood gravity, and so they could send water by aqueducts long distances. Amazing what they did. Electricity is something that I have very little understanding of, even though I had to take in pre-med, I had to take physics in college. I just never got it. If I was kidding yesterday, I said, if we got invaded, the United States got invaded and taken over by some foreign country, and they just arbitrarily went from house to house and gave us new jobs. If they told me, whether you like it or not, starting tomorrow, you are an electrician. Well, I'm telling you, my lifespan suddenly would go from years or months or weeks to hours, because my lack of understanding a very powerful system that, by the way, I don't think was really understood or acknowledged until the 1890s, I believe. Think of that. That's not that long ago. We couldn't be having this conversation if people hadn't understood electricity and really taken that forward. When Mr. Banks, and some of you may know him, some may not, he was my mentor for 26 years, which is something that a physician who at that time had been in psychiatry almost 10 years and had 26 and a half years of formal education would be mentored for 26 years by a man that had 9 years of formal education. But it's true. It's true. I had gone in and out of clinical depression for about 20 years. I was 40 years old when I sat in front of Mr. Banks for the first time on April Fool's Day in 1983. I hadn't been hospitalized, but I had come close to taking my life, or at least having those thoughts that I fought off or got away from. I'd seen 6 different psychiatrists, and I was diagnosed as having a depressive disorder. I thought it was a thing. I thought it was something that, because of my genes, I had depression on both sides of the family. I had alcoholism on both sides of the family. I now have suicide on both sides of the family. I thought it was something that was kind of almost predestined that I'd be depressed, and didn't have much of a choice. I didn't understand the system of life, and you don't have to believe what I say. And when I quote Mr. Banks, anything I quote Mr. Banks, it's not because I believe anything he ever said because he said him, is because I looked in that direction and I realized from within that vast pool of consciousness that's within every human being, I realized the truth in what he said. And Again, if anybody wants to ever learn about it, you can go to www.sidbanks.com and go to the Long Beach lectures. And the third one, he talks about his experience. He says, okay, for the 102nd time, one last time, I'll tell you what happened. And in that, he talks about, and I remember him talking to me about it at the end of this 3-day experience. He said, I suddenly was enveloped by a white light and a buzzing sound. And I saw what people call God was. I saw what life was. And I saw how the two are connected. So he had this experience where he saw the system of life. He saw what was behind life, which people have made up a lot of scary stuff about. In fact, I was terrified about what was behind life, and I will not mess with anybody's religious beliefs, but you don't have to be religious to be spiritual. And the religious beliefs that I was indoctrinated with terrified me. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but I'm just telling you my experience. It terrified me. I was told that there was this being behind life that was all loving and deserving of all of our love, but he'd taken the time to create a place where he was going to punish lots and lots of people for an eternity at torment. And I was terrified. What Mr. Banks saw, and what I've come to see, is that what's behind life is not judgment and punishment, but is pure love and understanding. You don't have to see that. You don't even have to be willing to look in that direction. One of the things that I say is that people don't know that there's an organization. I don't know if you've ever heard me say this, Dave, but there's an organization in all 195 countries based on unconditional love. Did you know that, Dave? All 195 countries. Now, if that was true, that would at least be circumstantial evidence that what's behind life was pure love and understanding, would it not be? Yeah, there is. There's an organization in all 195 countries in the world based on unconditional love. Are you curious to what the name of the organization is? It's called grandparenting. Not 100%, but most grandparents let go of their fears and expectations that keeps some parents from loving unconditionally. And there's no judgment. We're all doing the best we can given our understanding of the system. Given our understanding of the system. For 41 years of my life, not only did I think what behind life was pretty judging and punishing, but I thought that the only thing, whenever I didn't know what to do next in life, I thought that the only thing I had to address not knowing was to figure it out. To use my analytical thinking ability to try to figure it out. I'm sure nobody else on this call has ever overused their analytical thinking, but you might know a relative or somebody that did. Many have heard me say one of my favorite things is to quote Woody Allen, who made many movies. I think he's still alive. He's got to be at least as old as I am, in his 80s. He made a movie called Sleeper many, many years ago, probably 30 years ago. And in that movie, he was asleep for 25 years and he wakes up and he realizes when he comes to this moment, he realizes he's been asleep for 25 years. He says, 25 years, hell, I could have been halfway through my analysis. It's supposed to be a joke, guys. Come on, humor me. Smile. You know, my daughter used to say, Dad, when she was a child, she's now 38, and she's gorgeous and wonderful, and just if she calls me, I better have an empty bladder, or I could be in trouble because I get laughing so hard. But she used to, when she was a teenager, she'd say, Dad, do you realize that every time you tell a joke, right after you tell the joke, there is only one person laughing, and it's you? And then people start laughing at you, laughing at your own silly joke, and you think they're laughing at your joke. But anyway, enough. All I thought I had was analysis, and it didn't work out for me. I spent a lot of time in misery and depression and confusion. And one of the things that happens when you start to understand that the entire universe, and I'll get to this thing called the three principles, but I thought this morning in preparation for the talk, I'm gonna give you a real, just kind of, I like to keep things simple. So we've got a bed of flowers, and we cover them over on all three of the four sides and on the top, but we leave one end open to the sun. What happens to the flowers? I see some people saying that they're showing the flowers, they start bending towards the light, do they not? They start bending towards the light. That's a manifestation, if there ever was, of the power of the three principles. The entire universe is intelligent. What an intelligent thing to do, to move toward the sun, to bend so not only you get the light, but as far back as possible behind you, the other flowers get light. I sometimes say, not all of the flowers bend to the light. The teenagers, many of the teenage flowers don't. That's supposed to be a bad joke again. They fold their arms and say, make me. No, that's not true. They bend also to the light. Because the universe is intelligent. It's conscious. If the universe wasn't conscious, it wouldn't realize that it wasn't getting enough light and that it needed light. It's intelligent, it's conscious, and it's creative. Mind, intelligence, consciousness, thought. Even being intelligent and knowing that you need light and being aware that you don't have enough right now, if you don't have the creative power of thought to stimulate, catalyze action where you literally start bending towards it, if you miss any one of those three, the flower doesn't get the light it needs. So what are we? We're the same thing that flower is, the same thing with my lemon tree is. We're a manifestation of an energy that Mr. Banks would say, and David Bohm, the quantum physicist, would say that what people call God is the energy of all things, either in form or formless. Even the physicists are starting to see that. There's nothing, there can be nothing separate from the whole. Now, we couldn't have this talk if we weren't in this illusion of form to where it looks like we're all separate in all these different places. but we're all the same energy connected. We're not separate. So that like the lemon tree and like the flowers, we also are made of that same. If you don't like the word divine, use universal, use Dave, use Marianne. Use whatever. The label doesn't matter to me, but there is a creative, intelligent, conscious energy that we are not separate from. We are that, and we're using it to create our experience one thought at a time. And we're storing it. We've got this computer we carry around wherever we go that stores every experience that we have. And somebody pointed out earlier, unconscious, we can't be conscious of all the memories we have, but we couldn't do that. It wouldn't be compatible with being in our life. And there is a grain of truth that those memories can get triggered. So there could have been, if the first time that I met Jen, if first time that I met her, as I was reaching to shake hands or to have a gentle hug, I found myself, my eyes tearing and my hair standing on end and my stomach turning. If I just stayed in the moment, I might say, oh my gosh, Jen is almost a double for, or could be her really close sister to a friend of mine that died in college in a car accident. And meeting Jen triggered from that file, her likeness, a memory. It is true. But here's the deal, and I'll be glad to give some examples here, folks. If we know that we're not our thoughts, if we know that we're not our experience, we won't be frightened by any experience, and we won't be frightened of having any experience. Because we'll know that if we do the best we can to go to be where we are. People ask me, what do you do when have a thought thunderstorm? I said, what came to mind was, what do I really do? I do the best that I can to be where I am. Before I understood the system, that's where the goodies are in the present moment. That's where the wisdom is. That's where it's always trying to come through if I don't shroud it over or create static to keep from hearing it. I do the best I can to be where I am without judgment of how well I'm doing. Did people hear that? Without judgment. Because my brain would start saying, oh, great teacher of the Western world, you're about a 2 out of 10 present. Well, if I care about that, then I'm lost, because I'm going to start thinking about it. Oh, I should be able to do this better. God, I hope it's not on Instagram that Bill Pettit was a 2 out of 10 being present. Oh my God, let alone TikTok with the dance or whatever they do. But if I'm just a 2 out of 10, you know what? I'm going to be the best darn 2 I can be. And anytime I'm in acceptance of where I am and doing the best that I can to be where I am, I don't stay at a 2 very long. I'm up at a 3 and then a 4 and then a 5. But if I'm in resistance to where I am at a 2, before I know it, I'm at a 1 and then in the basement. not even noticing that I'm the one that has the finger on the elevator down button that's taken me to the basement because I'm in resistance to where I am. So I'm going to try to, best an Irishman can do to keep his word. I've got 3 minutes here. I'm going to give 2 examples. Some of you may have heard them before. I told people yesterday on a call, I said, I don't know if I can teach any better than I did the day before, but maybe you can hear a little better if you just get more present. I have a friend in Israel. His name is Ofer Meyer. And regardless of how you feel about politics, because if you were from Lebanon, you know, I mean, everybody's always got their view of things, right? But a soldier in the Lebanon army, a soldier in the Israeli army, any army, Russian army, you're gonna deal with, in war, you deal with death and tragedy. And all 9 of his colleagues were killed in a rocket attack. He was in a part of an elite force. And he went into a deep depression and talk about adverse events and post-traumatic stress disorder. And I met him in 2008. He now is married and has a beautiful wife and a beautiful little girl. And he's got a degree in psychology, and he's getting a master's degree in child and adolescent psychology. And while we were doing a course with Judy Sedgman and 2 other veterans that had, combat experience, he came to one of the things when we were taping the missing link for veterans, Sid's book. And he said, I had this experience just a couple of weeks ago that I thought I should tell. This was before he got married and while he was still single, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. He said, 2 of my friends from Israel, from Tel Aviv, we decided to go to Barcelona for the weekend. And we got off the plane and we walked out of the airport, and we hadn't realized that it was a national holiday in Spain. And in national holidays in a lot of countries, not only in the United States, they do what? They shoot off fireworks. And explosions were in the air. Fireworks, explosions. And as somebody talked about earlier about the unconscious, before he was even conscious of having any thought about those, his heart was going 160. He was having trouble. He was breathing very fast, and he was profusely sweating and experiencing a fearful feeling. But he said, I was so grateful that I understand the system. And I'm not frightened by any experience I have, because I know it's thought created. And I know that if I don't feed it or fight it, it will be over in 4 to 5 minutes. There's a physiological reason for that. It has to do with the half-life of norepinephrine and noradrenaline, I guess, in England, noradrenaline and adrenaline. And so he said, I knew what to do. I knew to just sit, just immediately. I didn't say anything to my colleagues. I just sat on the curb and I didn't do anything. Because I know that the system is always moving towards health if I can get out of the way of it and let it do what it does, because it's driven by an intelligent, conscious, creative energy that's benevolent and beneficent, that's pure love and understanding. And he knows that, so he knew that so clearly at that time through realizations, that he sat quietly, and in 5 minutes he said, Bill, or he said to us, he said, in 5 minutes I noticed that my heart rate was completely normal. My breathing was completely normal. I was no longer perspiring, and I felt a deep level of calm. And from that place of calm, he said, I looked up at the fireworks and I turned to my buddies and I said, is this cool or what? And they had a wonderful weekend in Barcelona. They didn't have to take the next plane back to Tel Aviv. There is always hope because there is always health. There is a place within us, that place that's formless energy of life. Call it universal mind, call it divine mind, or what. It can't be scratched. It cannot. It can be covered over by our relationship to our thinking. If we don't know we're not our thoughts, we're going to be frightened by them and try to do something to change them. If I have a wildly illegal or inappropriate sexual thought, or even a violent thought, and I have them at times now even, and you know what happens? What I do is I just go to quiet. I just go to the present, because it isn't about analysis then. And I will tell you, about 99 times out of 100, and I don't know when that happens and I go to stillness, what I hear is, Bill, you're not rested. You're not taking care of yourself. You're trying to do at 80 what you used to do at 60. You need to take care of yourself. Oh, okay. Thanks. So even that wildly inappropriate thought was benevolent. It was trying to just wake me up to get present. So I can go back here and answer these questions. David, let me stop for a moment and just sit with it. And if you, I mean, I can go back now to these questions, whichever.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, mate.
Okay.
Cheers, Bill.
So how do you help another who's anxious and suicidal or lost? I'm telling you, first of all, what you want to do is you want to do whatever to keep the person safe. You know, if they need to be in the hospital to be safe right now, or if you've got people but you need to help them. You need to love them as best as you can. But as far as how you individually can help, you will know much better than anything I could tell you if you're in a peaceful state of mind. Because as your personal mind quiets down, everybody's, it's the way the system works. Divine mind is able to come through with clarity, and you just know what to do. You don't even know why you're doing it. It sometimes makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, and it's always gentle. There's a song by Leonard Cohen called The Anthem, which has a beautiful video with it from the London. It's a 9-minute video from the live London performance, and the chorus is everything has a crack in it. That's how the light gets in. I went to bed and I said, no, that's not all of it. In fact, I don't think that's most of it, but I know enough. If my analysis doesn't give me the answer within 2 minutes, I don't continue to look there. I go to bed, and by the way, even the most analytical person, if they go to sleep, your brain slows down at least 50%. That's why people say maybe I should sleep on it. Because you wake up and your personal mind's a little quieter. And what I saw was everything has a crack in it. That's how the light gets out. Because the light's already inside of every one of us. It's always there. The only thing that can shroud it over or keep it from is our intense attachment to the content of our thinking or our experience. So the best thing that you can do is to, and for people, I will just tell you, it'll probably be on my gravesite. If you want to understand this, for some reason, this welder with a 9th grade education was allowed, not the only person that's ever allowed a peek into the what people call the mind of God, but he had a huge peek, and he wrote 6 little books. They total like 806 pages. So an average of what, 135 pages. You can read 5 pages a day for a year, and you'll have read them twice through. I encourage everybody on this call, if you're looking for peace of mind, to very quietly read Mr. Banks's 6 books twice through and watch his videos, which are on www.sidbanks.com. You know, he allowed his first video to be made public 27 years after his experience, because he didn't want followers. He said, I'll talk to doctors, I'll talk to clergy, I'll talk to educators. I don't want followers. And when he was 70 years old, we said, Sid, we understand that, but we need something, because you're going to be gone someday. You're going to be dead. We need something to be able to show people, to have the experiences close to being live with you of what you were saying. And so he agreed to make the videos. I encourage you to do that. If you're serious about wanting to understand the system of life and having joy and going through life without fear, even fear of death. Listen, I wonder why I got spanked as a kid, right? The other day I was giving a talk, David, and I said, I've done some research. I'm a serious researcher. I've done some research, and it appears that between 79 and 82% of people eventually die. And everybody did what many of you just did. That's nonsense. Everybody. Oh, shoot. Yeah, that's right. Everybody does. Well, to the degree that you live this time that we have here on earth with any fear of dying, you're not going to enjoy the ride. In fact, I awoke a couple of weeks ago, and what came to me, enjoying the journey is the destination. It was like a plane bringing that banner behind it. And I saw, there wasn't really a plane, but in my mind, it was that big. I thought, my gosh, that's true. Enjoying the journey, regardless of what it is until it ends, that is the destination. Because once you're there, you're free. And we're none of us going to do it perfectly. Like Mr. Banks says, we're going to get psychological viruses. Fear, greed, resentment, guilt. But if we understand the system of psychological innocence, that everybody is doing the best that they know how to do each moment, or they do better, even when it's horrible. We don't waste any energy judging. I love the chapter, the first words of the chapter in The Missing Link on love and forgiveness is very simple. Mr. Banks rarely tells people what to do. He just tells them how the system works. And the opening lines of that chapter says the following. And I challenge anybody, if you were on a debate team, whether you would want to take the opposite argument. Here's the debate for this week. proposition is judging your own faults or the faults of others leads to unhappiness. Anybody want to take the opposite view and argue it? I don't get. Here's the other thing about mental illness. It doesn't happen by any one thought that a person has. If we don't understand what thought is, it's the 10,000 thoughts we have about a thought. Mr. Banks on page 106 here, he says, and I used to use this book in group therapy, and everybody, if you can imagine, Dave and Jen and everybody, the first two rows here, everybody is in the group and they have their book and they have the same book, right? And so on page 106, we take turns, those that feel comfortable reading, and I would raise my hand whenever it got to page 106 in the missing link. I'd say, oh, I got this one. So here's what I would read. Now, nobody, Jen, neither of you have your missing link nearby, do you? Does anybody have their missing link nearby? No, okay. Does anybody? I'm looking in the, you do? Does anybody have the hardback cover nearby? You do? Okay, now tell me, let's see your name. Melissa does. Okay, Melissa, can we unmute Melissa? So Melissa, so you got your hardback cover of the missing link? No, okay. Well, so page 106. Oh, so she doesn't really have it. I thought she had it there. It's okay. So you got page 106, Melissa? Okay, so Melissa's in the group, and I say, oh, I got 106, Melissa, and other people. And I say, if your thoughts wander onto a negative and rocky path, fight them like hell. Distract yourself in any way you possibly can. Try really, really hard to think positive thoughts. What if you were in the group that day, Melissa, what would you be doing right now? She's still muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Melissa.
Yeah, what would you be doing, Melissa? What would you be saying?
That's not what it says.
That's not what your book says?
No.
Is that what you're saying? Well,
Yeah.
that's what my book says. Well, man, I must have an older. Well, now I'm curious, Melissa. That my book, I wonder if I've got an older version or a new version. What does your book say, Melissa?
If your thoughts wander onto a negative and rocky path, don't take them too seriously.
Oh my gosh. God, that sounds a lot. That sounds maybe like more common sense than my book.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, always somebody would come up and they'd grab my book from the group and they'd say, his book says the same thing. Okay. Now, was I being mischievous? Yeah. And like I said, the treatment for oppositional defiant disorder in the late 1940s was wait till your father gets home. So I got spanked about 3 times a week for quite a while. And my brother, by the way, never got spanked once. And at family reunions, they always ask him, they say, wait a minute, Bill went through 2 or 3 years where he was spanked 3 times a week and you never got spanked? And they said, well, how could that be? He said, well, it's not rocket science. He said, I watched what Bill did and I didn't do it, you know. Now, the reason I said what I said was not just to be mischievous. In fact, not primarily. It was what I did for 40 years of my life because I took my thoughts seriously. I fought them like hell. I tried like hell to distract myself from them. I tried to think positive thoughts, and all it did was get me depressed. And I will just read the next. He says, refrain from analyzing. because I guarantee you, you will analyze yourself forever, never reaching an end. Never is a big word. It's a big word. And fail bitterly to find peace of mind. Wow. Now, people are talking about past experiences, and I'm going to go ahead here. What happened in the past may have influenced our present day personal or social problems. But please believe me, there is no answer to these problems in the past. Only in the now can the answer be found. The intensity and importance of such past events dissipates. I think of smoke people can blow, it dissipates into the air as we see that the past is no longer a reality, but a memory carried through time via our own thoughts. Traumatic, unconscious, traumatic experiences. People will have things awakened, but and I've, through my 50 plus years of working with people, I've had hundreds and hundreds, both military and sexual assault and you name it, traumatic experiences, or troubling experiences that they initially experienced as traumatic, but as they got to experience and truly realize, not believe, that they, like I said to one woman who was wanting to commit suicide and screaming at the nurse when I walked onto the floor of at West Virginia University with 20 of Mr. Banks's books, because the nurse had asked for 20 of the missing links to be brought over because he saw so many miracles happening for people that took the time to read them. She says, why won't they just let me die? Why won't they let me just commit suicide? She was screaming at the nurse. And I was about 15 feet away, and I'd just gotten off the elevator and come through the door. And I will tell you, people that know me would say that generally I'm respectful to other people, and I introduce myself, and I would never say anything without introducing myself. But on that day, as she was screaming, why won't they just let me kill myself? My mouth started moving. Many of you have heard this story. And I said to her, I'd never even introduced myself. I said, whatever you want to kill yourself over, is over. And it only exists now as a memory in your brain. And she yelled and screamed at me for about 2.5 minutes, saying things that were true, that I didn't know her. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know what she'd experienced. And when she got through, and I waited to make sure she was through, I said to her, what you just said was absolutely true, everything. But what I said was true also. And I know what you want. She said, you don't know what I want. I said, yeah, I do. You're like the rest of us. You want to live in a lighthearted, loving feeling where you can give and receive love freely. You want to be able to live in the present moment rather than in your thoughts. Because there's only two places people are moment to moment. They're either in their thoughts or in their life. Can't be in both places. Children playing or adults playing, they're present, they're thinking, but they're not in their thoughts. When I left, I put the books down and left. I heard later that 10 seconds later, that lady who had 23 hospitalizations in 9 years after a traumatic event said to the nurse, how do I get to see that man when I get out of here? And within a relatively short period of time, she was off all of her 8 medications. living a peaceful life and ready to go back to law school. She actually helped Jan and Chip Chipman in the women's prisons down in Tampa. A couple of times she lectured. And sadly, she was on the back of a motorcycle, and an drunk person went through a red light and killed both of them. But her mother called me the next day and she said, I knew you'd want to know, but I want you to know, as much grief as I have right now, I am filled with gratitude that I had 4.5 years, the last 4.5 years, that my daughter was with me and was in a wonderful state of mind. And I never dreamt that could have been possible. Teenagers with COVID, social media, rise in anxiety, all of that is true if people don't understand that it's an inside out life. It's an inside out world. Spiritual understanding informs your psychological understanding, but without it, people, let me make it, and then let me make it an example. If we'll just take 3 people. One person is spending less than 30 minutes a day activating their stress response in their body. That's healthy. Your body will be in incredible health for a long time if you are not activating the stress response with stressful thinking more than 30 minutes a day. So that's one person. They're doing 30 minutes a day. The second person is doing about 2 hours a day, 1.5 to 2 hours, in the middle of what I call 30 minutes to 3 hours. So an hour and a half a day, 2 hours. And then the third person is doing 6 to 8 hours a day of stressful thinking. What am I talking about? Worry, guilt for past events, resentment over past events, unresolved grief over past losses, being upset when things aren't the way you want them to be, over analyzing. Anytime you're analyzing using analysis where it's causing confusion, it's over analysis. Being driven or inhibited by fear, 6 to 8 hours. Now, so we've got this person 30 minutes, 2 hours, 6 to 8 hours. The COVID virus, all 3 of them are exposed to the COVID virus the same. Which ones do you think is going to have the best chance of having an immune system that's going to, they're not going to get it? And which one do you think is most likely to get it? Anybody? Doesn't it make sense? The 30 minutes, not going to get it probably, or much higher chance that they're not going to get it. 6 to 8 hours, because their immune system is compromised by the fact they're having to take all that immune function stuff. Okay. Same thing with vaccines. I know this is controversial, but if you gave somebody who's at total peace, somebody 2 hours a day and 6 to 8, which one do you think is more likely to have an adverse reaction to the vaccine? Again, the state of the immune system, it matters. It matters. And it's no judgment. We're all doing the best we can. And I'll finish with this story and then take another question or hit the next one. I had a lady from a country I won't say. She's working a 3 principles teacher, and she's working with a monastery and also with some Catholic nuns. And she was teaching this nun the 3 principles, or sharing these 3 principles, because you can't really teach them. You can just share. It's a metaphor for what God is, what life is, and how they're connected, and how your experience is from the inside out as a result of that. So this nun was 80 years old, this Catholic nun, and she was getting a stress test. And the doctor wanted to get her pulse up to 135 to see how her heart would tolerate 135. Well, she's running as she could on this treadmill, couldn't get it up over 125. So the cardiologist, she said, leaned into her and said, "Sister, think of somebody that you hate, that you really have a fair amount of anger and hatred towards. Folks, within seconds, her pulse went to 135. As soon as she gave that thought, it affected all 50 trillion cells in her body, including her heart muscles, and her pulse went to 135. When I used to lecture at the university to the cardiology fellows, I remember telling them there was a study that showed with hostility that for every point of hostility on the hostility scale filled out before the coronary bypass graft surgery they call cabbages, for every point of hostility, there was a 7% increased mortality at 30 days. Wow. For every point on the hostility scale, a 7.7 percentage. This one is even more incredible, as Jen said, maybe unbelievable, but I remember it. There was this one scale for women who were going to go into coronary bypass surgery, artery bypass surgery. If they checked the box that said, I feel lonely much of the time, their mortality rate at 30 days was 250% increased. Holy crap. And of course, one of the cardiology fellows said, oh, thanks for telling us, Doc. I'm going to tell all my lady patients to never check that box. as if it had anything to do with checking the box. A 9-year-old fear of life, all you can do is to the degree that you have calm and your own acceptance of that we're here as a second home and we're going back to our first home, only to the degree of your understanding of the mystery. And you don't lie to children because they know they've got sharp bullshit meters. All you can do is maybe sit with that 9-year-old and say, you know, it's a mystery to me too. I don't know for sure what happens at the end of life. I think it's going to be okay, but I know that worrying about it is going to make it, whenever I do that, I'm less able to enjoy life while I'm here. And whatever your words were, as long as they're honest and the child feels that you love and you care for them, they're going to access that place of wisdom and they're going to know they're okay. I remember a lady who was in a fellowship with me. She was a social worker, and her father had died when she was 8, and her mother died when she was 11. And her mother's sister was in incredible grief. And this little gal, 11-year-old, who'd lost both of her parents, somehow, some way, she said, I just was grateful that it had them for 8 and 11 years. I missed my mom, but more than anything, I just felt gratitude that I had. And my aunt kept telling me, you're not being realistic. You need to grieve. So she said, I tried it for about a week and it was so painful. I said, nah, no way. I'm going back to my life. Now, that's not a should. That's not telling people that they shouldn't go through whatever they go through. But to the degree that you know that you're being given everything you need to heal, you will heal much quicker than if you read some book about how long it's going to take. So that's my best shot at the questions we had. Even when people are psychotic, as far as, well, here's the grain of truth in that. If a person continues to create the psychosis with their thinking, because that's the only thing that creates it, the psychosis, and this is going to be hard for some people to hear, the symptoms that we have are benevolent attempts to keep us alive. So how could psychosis be benevolent? Psychosis is, I have created such a painful world in my head that the only option is either suicide or to create another world, to go to another world. I presented a couple of years ago in London with a PhD psychologist who had a psychotic episode. He was psychotic for about 8 weeks. He said, Bill, he told the audience, he said, what Dr. Pettit just said is absolutely true. I remember now that right before I went psychotic, the last thoughts I was struggling with was to kill myself. And the psychosis, especially, I saw that over and over with manic psychosis. I saw one man that in his psychotic depressed state was believing that the last thought he remembered was that he loved his wife and 2 children. He was going to kill his wife and 2 children so they wouldn't have to suffer like in this world that was so horrible. And then he was going to kill himself. And that manic episode, the nice thing about a manic episode is it does 2 things. It gets people's attention and it gets you help. And it kept him alive. And it's a wonderful story because he had a wonderful life after that. He never got, he had years and follow up, and he did fine because he learned the system. He wasn't frightened by his thoughts, and he learned how to go to the present moment when he got lost. I wish I was doing better, folks. This is the best I got. I'm trying. We've got 10 minutes left.
Beautiful, Bill. Thank you so much. What do you want to do, Bill? Do you want to take another question or?
Oh, I'm glad to. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't, or we can sit quiet for a couple of minutes, whatever. Yeah.
I'm wondering, Catherine, if you have anything you'd like to ask Bill while he's here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I don't know if my earphones were working. I don't even know why I've unblocked it because I don't even know what I'm asking. I'm just sitting here waiting. Ishka's out in the snow, creating something for the last hour. And I'm sat in the middle of about 1 million opinions. And I just love her. And I don't know what the answer is anymore. And so much so that I don't even know what the question is. No, I'm angry. I'm angry that it's been nearly 4 weeks and the support from inverted commas the professionals, or there's nowhere to take somebody so that they can go through this experience and express themselves and find their whatever they're doing and being and wanting to explore and to find. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go in England. And you ask all the professionals and you make all the calls and you answer all the emails and you do everything that everyone tells you that's a good idea. And then you're told that your daughter's going to be sectioned if she doesn't take drugs. And you know that 3-4 weeks ago she was in a performance, creative and beautiful and with every bit of life ahead of her. And now she's sad and stressed and angry and confused and wants me but doesn't want me. Doesn't want to go to hospital, and if she doesn't want to go to hospital herself, then they'll take her away. And I don't know what to do. And I don't even care anymore that everyone knows it's me and my daughter. Because it is. This is my life. This is our life. I haven't seen my other children properly for weeks because they can't be here and my doors are locked in every room, so she can't destroy it. I don't know what to do, and I want you to come here and be with her for a few weeks and make it better, and someone who actually trusts that she's going to be all right. I want to trust that she's going to be all right. I have been trusting, and every day I wake up and hope that she's going to come back into her being and remember who she is. So I don't know what my question is because I don't know where I am. And I've still got the fight in me. And I'll do whatever it takes. Everyone else is tired. And all my support team are tired and exhausted. And I have...
Do you have faith that whatever happens with Ishka, that she'll be okay at some point? Because it feels like you have a fear that if she goes down this road, it's going to be a catastrophe, or if she does this, it's going to be a catastrophe, or if she does that, it's going to be a catastrophe. And that at some point, she's got her innate health, she's got her innate well-being, and regardless of what's happening, or if she's sectioned, or she isn't sectioned, or she goes voluntarily to an institution, or she doesn't, that she's got her core, and at some point she'll find that. Because to my mind, if you're aware of that and you have faith that she will find her strength, her groundedness at some point, then whatever happens is going to be okay at some point. So what I'm asking you is, like, do you have faith in Ishka in that regard, or in your perspective, on your feelings about Ishka? Because people are going to get tired and they're going to get exhausted in this situation. It's a perfectly natural thing.
I'm not aware who you are. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm Dietmar and I'm Ishka's stepdad.
Okay, thank you, Dietmar. Thank you. Was that her mother speaking?
Yes, that was her mother, Catherine. Yes.
Okay, Catherine, can you hear me, Catherine?
Yeah.
You said you would do anything, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched Mr. Banks's the video, the Long Beach lectures?
Some time ago. I've
Some
been
time ago? Okay.
around this for like 20 years.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to which one of the books of Mr. Banks is your favorite? Have you read the books?
Missing link.
That's the only, I mean, have you read all of them or just some of them or?
I'm not a big reader. I've just been
Okay.
around it a lot. I've been in school and
Okay. Have you read Dear Liza?
no.
Do you have Dear Liza? Jen, do you have Dear Liza? Dave, do you guys have Dear Liza?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, Jen was nodding. Yes, we do.
You know, okay. Would you, would your Catherine, will
Mhm.
she sit with you at all?
No,
Ever?
not
You'd never-
really.
Would she read a book on her own?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
She
I
can
would
barely
encourage,
do
I would
anything like that yet.
okay, okay. Well, all you can do right now is love her, but your distress is understandable, but it's not helpful
I
to her
know.
right now. You know that, okay.
I'm only experiencing it on this call because I am, but most of the time I'm not distressed and I'm showing
Okay.
love, and it's nearly 4 weeks.
But you're feeling the distress inside, huh?
Sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, okay. Well, that's great that there's times that you don't. Somehow it's came to me, and it may be, I've grown to trust, it wasn't a plan, but something tells me that if you read the Dear Liza,
Mm.
and that you just find calm for yourself,
Yeah.
that your daughter is going to be drawn to that well-being.
Okay.
She's going to be drawn to it because she's looking for a safe haven, and to
Yeah.
see somebody who's full of peace, even in difficult circumstances, is going to be that, it's going to be that safe haven.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you and again, if it's, can I go a few minutes over, 5 minutes? Can I? Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story, Catherine, that it may seem irrelevant. It's coming to me to tell the story. I worked at a state hospital in West Virginia the last 10 months or 15 months, 18 months that I was there at the university. And there was a man who had been treated, actually he'd been raised in a hole in the backyard, if you can
Mhm.
imagine. He'd been treated like an animal much of his youth. And then he was assaulted terribly by a step father for years. Every day he came home from. And he got so angry and so bitter that he spent his whole life in and out of jails and in and out of the state hospital. I think he was in this time for his 63rd admission to the state hospital. And every other doctor, when they saw him on their admission list, they would shudder, and I would get excited to see him again. And every time I saw him, it seemed like it took longer that he had to come back into the hospital. And the last time was months before I left. He came into the hospital, and I was sitting quietly, just trying to reflect, see what came to mind. And something said, read Dear Liza to him. And I sat and read this little 88-page book, Dear Liza. I read it to him, and at some point while I was reading, I got permission from him. I said, can I read this little story to you? And just with no expectations. And at some point he just started sobbing, Catherine. He sobbed and he sobbed and he sobbed. And I just put a box of tissue next to him. And when he finally stopped, he said, Dr. Pettit, these tears are not tears of sadness. My heart has been touched for the first time. He was about 58, since I was 6 years old, which was when the assault started. My heart has been touched for the first time and opened. It's open now for the first time in 52 years. And I felt a couple of tears trickle down my cheek. And he was never hospitalized again while I was there. Now, I don't know. Maybe he was hospitalized afterwards, maybe, but something happened that I knew that he had made a step. And it's incremental. Every little step, if we can be grateful for every little thing we see, and accept where we are, direction is the key. And Ishka may take incremental steps, but if she can just be kept safe and loving. And I'll say something about medications. It's just my view as a psychiatrist. Medications are not God. I remember Sid one time said to somebody that didn't want their daughter to take the medication, he said, you know, that medication is God too. It's made of the same energy. And if I used medications, now I didn't use them for that they had to be on them for their life, but I used them because if people are so psychotic that they can't get quiet enough to hear or to listen, then the medication can give them some relief from the pain they're in. Whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression. I did electroconvulsive therapy for people that were so suicidal that they couldn't trust themselves, not killing themselves. I did whatever was needed to give them, the person, some relief, to get enough relief from their mental torture that they're innocently creating for themselves, but they don't know it. So to me, the medications, the antipsychotic medications, can be life-saving. Now, I will tell you that in countries that can't afford to do it for more than a few weeks, their results are 800% better than the countries where people are on them for years and years and years. But if my daughter was in a psychotic state, that's all I'm saying is mine, I would certainly let them give her antipsychotics to get her out of the pain that she's in. What I can hear from here is that Ishka is in incredible pain right now. She's trying to express it as best as she can. And it seems crazy, but it's the best effort she can to tell you how much pain she's having right now. So that anything,
I'm happy to give them to her.
medications or anything, pardon me?
I'm happy to give them to her. They've been
Yeah.
available for the last week, but the psychiatrist that we saw gave them to her and kind of gave her responsibility for it. And we don't know whether she's had them or not had them. And then now they're saying that in order for me to continue at the house, we have to have some control over that. She needs to have the medication, and I'm not opposed to it at all. I'm totally open to the fact that that could be what she needs. I don't know how
Well,
to give it to her.
yeah, and you may, whatever. That's not. I think we don't need to the issue on that. I'd be glad to meet sometime separate if we want to,
Okay.
David, but not on this time. But I would just know that she's doing the best she can. She's really in a lot of pain, and love her. But your mental well-being would be more powerful than any medication that the psychiatrist has. And
Yeah.
it's not just you acting like you're in mental well-being, to the degree, and no judgment here, no judgment. But I think sometimes we think that we measure our love for somebody by how much pain we have when we lose them or when they're having trouble. And it's that's not a measure of love.
No.
And so the more that you can find your own well-being, that will be more powerful than any medication that any doctor can give your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay? Make that a priority. I think that would be my encouragement, not my prescription.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be okay if I said something, please?
I don't know who you are, but it's fine.
Oh, my name's Colin. Nice to meet you, William. So I'm not a doctor, but my personal experience is through being in a psychotic state myself many years ago. And so my experience comes from personal experience of that kind of that world that we kind of visit. And I totally agree with you, William, with regards to medications necessary at the time, you know, because it just needs to get some sort of alleviation, even if it's temporary, just something just to take the edge off, you know. And 10 years ago, I became an EFT practitioner. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, tapping. And it's been a profound changer for many people I've worked with psychosis as well. One gentleman I'm working with at the moment, he's 49. He's had psychosis all his life. He's been sectioned 6 times, and I've had 5 sessions with him. And already within those 5 sessions, he's already saying, I feel like a completely different person. Like things are changing for me, because there's a way that EFT works on an energetic level, and also a way of expressing. And I think that's partly where it becomes so difficult to express anything, that you know, this tapping actually works really, really well. And for you guys, Dietmar, I'd like to actually offer my services to you for free, just to see if I can be of any assistance to your daughter, because we can also do something called surrogate tapping, which we know also, because nothing's separate from anything. So we can also do something called surrogate tapping, which means we tap on behalf of her. And again, you know, the changes have been profound in people just by experiencing, you know, a subtle change, even in the short term. But I would definitely agree with what William said about having something just to take the edge off, and then seeing what goes on after that.
Thank you,
But,
Colin. That's really kind of you. I think
Thank you.
one of the issues with Ishka is that she's been refusing medication. She's been refusing to take the antipsychotics.
Yeah,
is she refusing any kind of help?
it's best for us to leave that myself from this forum, but I don't know how you feel, David. I mean, I don't know that this is the forum for that.
I agree. Thank you so much, Colin. And thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, Colin.
You've gone over by 10 minutes. So we appreciate that extra time that you've given us there, mate.
No, gladly.
Thank you everybody who's come on this call. This is a member of mine and Jen's family who we love very, very dearly. And it's fascinating, it's distressing, it's all kinds of emotions when you're family. And the last group of people that family ever wants to listen to is family.
Dave, sit back a little bit.
Sorry, I think I was just saying the last group of people, the last person that anybody wants to listen to is family. I think it was Ram Dass who said, if you think you're enlightened, go and spend a week with your family. And that's kind of what we're up against. Luckily, we all do have this understanding underneath our belt. We do get help. We do know she's there. We do understand she's in pain. She's hurting a great deal. The trouble that we're having at the moment is that pain is spilling out into behaviour that is literally destroying everything. Kath and Dietmar's house is destroyed. Flooding, water doors coming off, everything's out the window. Broken, everything's broken. This behaviour is very destructive, and it's everything that Bill said tonight is true, and I hope that people who have been listening to this, I hope you can all take something home from this personally. This isn't just about Asia, this is about all of us. This is about all of us. Everybody's come here because of love. Love for somebody else, and love for themselves. Bill's absolutely correct in that. So with love, I just say thank you to everybody who's here. And thank you for everybody who donate. This money is not going to be spent on Jenny and myself. Absolutely not. We're family. We don't get paid by family. This is for moving forward, treatment if it's necessary. Fixing stuff. This family isn't very rich. This is a rented house. And we just say with love, thank you. And Bill, thank you so much for your time Thank you
You're
so much for your
welcome.
kindness.
You're welcome. And the one last thing that comes to mind, I remember, because I hear people going in and out of their well-being, and I remember lecturing on a Friday morning. I did a group on the addictions unit at the university, and this one man said that I said, how much time each day right now are you at peace, in a quiet peace? And he said, about the first 3 minutes when I wake up, I'm in a quiet peace. And I said, well, here's my suggestion to you. Make all of your decisions that are important in those first 3 minutes. After that, just hunker down and do the best you can. But any decisions you have to make about life, make them in those first 3 minutes when you're at a quiet peace. And if you do that, before you know it, effortlessly, that 3 minutes is going to be 11 minutes. And that 11 minutes is going to be 28 minutes. And that 28 minutes is going to be an hour and 10 minutes. And an hour and 10 minutes is going to be 2 hours and 40 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. It's the direction, not the speed, that's important. And with that, I'll say peace. Peace to everybody. Can we let everybody unmute
Unmute everyone.
everyone? Okay, folks, have a wonderful,
you so
wonderful
much.
day.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Very wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice being
Thank
with you.
you. Bye. Love to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you so
God
much.
bless.
Okay, folks.
Thank you.
Dave, Jen, let me know if there's anything I can do, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm
Thanks
so
so
glad
much,
it's recorded because Lucia's had a lot to say. So there's been different bits I haven't been able to hear so much. So I'm going to watch it back.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, everyone. Jen, are we still recording?